2024 draws to a close, we wanted to share some insight to the podcast episodes we produced during the year. Over the past 11 months, we covered topics ranging from transgender issues to healthcare, business, and politics.
We also talked to some amazing people and enjoyed hearing their stories. We learned about how a drag queen got into a bar fight and lived to fight another day, how a young man would grow up to become a historical pillar of our gay community, and how old friends can still make each other laugh talking about their absolutely fabulous moments.
It has been our great pleasure working on these episodes and encourage you to listen to all of them at www.queeronda.com. We look forward to our upcoming episodes in 2025. For now, here's our year in review and some choice words about each episode.
Hello, and welcome to our final episode of Queer Onda El Paso for 2024. This episode, we thought we'd have a little fun, so I'm sitting here with Izzy.
Hello.
And Ceci.
Hello.
And we thought we would go through each of our previous month's episodes and talk a little bit about what we learned this past year and how things might change for the coming year. So let's get right into it. Our first episode of the year was called Single and Looking, where we interviewed Aaron Barbara, who talked about his life as a single gay man in El Paso. I'm going to go through each episode. You all tell me one word that in your mind capsulized that episode, and we can talk a little bit more about it. Episode 5, Single and Looking. What's your word for that episode, Izzy?
Resilient.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. I thought he was sweet. It was sweet to hear his perspective. That's how I felt about it. Like, it was very sincere.
I also found it, well, my word would be informed, because I think that he was really self-aware about where he was in his singleness and his dating life and what he was looking for, but still open to other types of possibilities. So it was hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do agree that. And he was also very sweet. And quite frankly, I developed a little bit of a crush on him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was a cutie.
He has the beautiful eyes. Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, tell me about your single life. But no, I think that he was a very good choice for that interview. And I think while he didn't probably, doesn't speak for all single men in El Paso and their experience, but I think that he's certainly intelligent and compassionate and interesting, and he certainly talked about that. So if you all want to hear that episode with Aaron Barber talking about being single and looking in El Paso, it's episode 5, and you can find it on our podcast website, www.queeronda.com. Moving on. Our next one, actually, I have a familial connection to, because it was an interview that we did with my great nephew, Samuel Escobedo, who also is known as Damas B. Wilson. And his episode is called Heels and Feels. Izzy, what was your take on that episode? What's your word?
Strong. I just think his character was right on the point. It was big. It was bold. It was what you'd expect. It was inspiring to hear him talk about all the things that he faced and how he became who he became. And I loved it.
And I feel the same way. I felt like Brave would kind of summed him up. Just drag queens in general, based on the current climate and everything. And I think seeing him go out there and enjoy what he's doing and get that satisfaction, it was nice to see.
My word is burlesque. The reason I say that is because that movie is so wonderfully campy, and so's he. But also underneath it all, they really talked about community and family and taking care of each other, and what he learned through his drag persona, what he learned in real life, and learn about how he came to be both of those people. And so as a great uncle, and I'm not saying I'm a great uncle, I mean I'm a great uncle, meaning that I'm his father's uncle.
Yes.
It made me very proud of the familial side.
Right.
But if we weren't even related, I'd say, boy, this chick's got it together.
Right? Yeah. And going back to the word campy, I love the word campy. How would you describe campy?
I think that's an interesting phrase. We've heard it all of our lives.
Yeah.
Right? What defines camp? And to me, I think it's just always that wink and a nod after everything. So, people that don't take themselves so seriously, and they have really funny and sometimes very biting and intelligent things to say. And then at the end of it, it's just a little bit of a wink. To me, that's just camp. It's just overdone enough and exaggerated enough, but it somehow still hits home.
Absolutely perfect way of putting it. Yeah, it's like a wink, a nod, and a kick. You know?
Exactly. Right in the knockers.
Right.
Okay, moving on. Our next episode after that was episode 7 called Floats and Flair. And the reason we called it that is because we wanted to really give a shout out to the wonderful work that El Paso Sun City Pride has been doing in our community for almost 20 years now. I think they're celebrating their 20th anniversary this coming year. And we were fortunate enough to help develop a relationship with them through this podcast and help support them in the best ways that we can here. But it's such a great organization, and the people that we spoke to were the committee members for the Pride Parade. And so I guess my word there is progress, because I know, and Izzy, you were there too, back when we were still riding around in Flintstone cars, the very first Pride Parade, which was really, really, really cheesy compared to where we are now. And so I just couldn't help but look at these people that have volunteered their time to help organize the Pride celebrations. And that how far we've come and how far we can still go. And so it was very encouraging to me. So I just really thought it was extremely progressive. Sassy, what was your...
I would say history, because of the fact that over the years, they continue to do it. They encourage the community to come out. And it's not just about the gay community. It's a family-oriented event. And you can see that when you're at the parade and when you're at the event afterwards at the park.
And we talked about that in that episode. What about you, Iz? What's your word for that?
Well, for me, it would be professional, because I think they organize so well and they put it together so well. It's a lot of work. I mean, I watched them as they were putting together, some of their stuff and getting their act together on the day of the parade and things like that. And you think they are corralling this many people, putting all of this together and under, they're just a few bodied people.
It's quite a feat for the organization. Yeah.
So it's volunteer work, and then they raise money for scholarships and other philanthropic work. It's outstanding. And El Paso should be proud.
And they pull it off professionally.
Right.
And it gets bigger and better every year.
That's right. Yeah. And believe me, we like things when they get bigger and better.
Oh, yeah.
All right. The next episode that we did was called Her and Him, which is episode 8. If you're looking for it on our website, queeronda.com. And we talked to June Contreras and Brandon Merritt about their transgender experience. And my word for that is poignant, because it made me understand a little bit more about the transgender experience. And as a gay man, I thought that I understood it, but it turns out the more I looked into it, the less I did. And to really understand the distinction between sexual identity and gender identity. And I think that both Brandon and June did an exceptional job of kind of walking us through that and helping us kind of gain some insight into their lives and their experience. And in turn, kind of the universal, this is a transgender experience. This is what most transgender people go through. Izzy, what was your word?
Well, and it was along the line of yours, enlightened. Because I've never walked in those shoes. I've never walked in those heels. But, I definitely learned about the challenges. You think as a gay man, I face all of these things and blah, blah, blah. But there's a whole different world of what you face when you're changing, sex or living as another other than what you were born, and so I was definitely enlightened by that. And I one thing I thought is, well, as a gay man, I don't have a whole lot to complain about when I think about the struggles that they go through.
Good point. Yeah. Sometimes, when it seems like the further we get along and gay men still have struggles, our struggles may not be as great as they once were, say, in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that all of us are going through that. The transgender people, particularly now in this political climate, are facing and will be facing even more backlash. And so I think it was important for us to at least lay a foundation. I don't think it'll be the last time that we cover this topic in our podcast, but it gave us the three of us, a little bit more understanding about the experience, and perhaps gives us a little bit more insight on how to move forward to better represent the transgender community through our podcast. Ceci, what was...
Well, that leads to my word, which to me is acceptance. It's about understanding they just want to live their lives. They want to be able to make the choices that affect them directly and not have anyone else involved in their decisions.
Right.
And just the same way women don't want anyone else involved in their decisions, you know, it's just a matter of accepting who they are.
I also wanted to just note, as you were saying that about, you know, the struggles and those kinds of things that they go through. And I think when I think of the you know, the gay rights movement, it was the drag queens, it was the transvestites that fought, that were the first to throw the brick at Stonewall and that kind of thing. And I think now, as they're facing this, I think it's a good time for us as gay men to rally behind our sisters and brothers who are in trans mode. We need to step up politically in voting and protect them as well, the way they did for us.
You know, it's interesting because I had a conversation with a gentleman about our podcast, and he said that he didn't particularly care for the fact that the LGBTQ had become kind of hijacked by the trans movement, and they're the most visible now. And what about, you know, the people that are just gay men that wanted to be gay men? And I said, well, you know, I don't know that we can pick and choose right now. I think that, you know, your enemy just by proximity is my enemy.
Right.
And when I see that, I know that in the media we're being led to believe like there's this transgender epidemic facing the world, and our president-elect is saying to this day that children are leaving home from school, one gender and coming back another. And of course, the reality is, you know, a teacher posted, it's like, I can't even give my student an aspirin, much less a sex change. So, I mean, there's absolutely no truth to that, but there are people that believe it. And so that to me is another reason to cover this topic again and again and again.
Absolutely.
And Izzy, you actually said something that just stuck with me. It's like you had said that somebody was questioning you and saying, I don't understand this transgender thing. And you said, you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. And, you know, I went to, speaking of Brooke, she was leading this transgender day of remembrance. And going back to what you were circling back to what you were talking about us all being in this together, I talked about how our podcast, when we decided the name of it, was Queer because it unites all of us. The alphabet, you know, the LGBTQIA alphabet separates us. I think that it's good for us to be under one moniker, that we are together, especially during this time. So what you said really made me think, yeah, that's right. We need to stand together. We need to be one unit and be united in that way.
Strength in numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And also, you know, we all know when we're facing a prejudice and it can take many forms, but essentially, you know, if somebody goes after the transgender community, it won't be long before they go after the drag queens, which they already have in this country, you know, and then the gay men and the lesbians, and they're talking about, you know, rolling back marriage equality. And so it's a slippery slope.
Yes.
And so all I know is that under the rainbow umbrella that we all are, if one of us is offended, then we all should be offended. And if one of us is on the defense, then we all need to be defensive about it. And that is becoming particularly true in this next coming year as we see how things unfold. I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to join the ranks of our incoming president and to say that all these terrible things are going to happen, because that remains to be seen. I still have faith in people. But ultimately, I do believe that this is simply a choice that people make individually about their lives. It has nothing to do with your children if they're not covered, if they're not questioning their gender or they're feeling gender amorphic or whatever. You know, if they're not doing that, then it has nothing to do with them. And therefore, it has nothing to do with you. But these are for the people that actually are going through that and their experience. And there's absolutely no reason for them to feel less than anybody else in this country. And so I think moving forward, it really just needs to be a question about equality for all genders and however it is that you identify. Interestingly enough, Brandon, who we interviewed, just a couple of months after our interview, has decided to embrace his identity as Brooke.
Yes.
And so now they are living their life as a presenting as a female, and it looks lovely, by the way.
Yes, she does.
And I think that and June, who was here presenting, and when we interviewed her as a female, I could not help but feel moved by their stories and their strength and their tenacity to say, this is who I am. And for anybody else to deny them that is just so incredibly unfathomable to me.
Mm-hmm.
What's even more moving is that they've taken their struggles and they have put it into practice in their missions and in their community activity.
Right.
Yeah. So they're using the bad negative stuff and turning it into something good and positive.
They're coming from a place of privilege and influence because they're both involved in academia. And so, if we want to talk about educating future generations, that's a darn good place to start.
Absolutely. And like a friend of mine says, and I was like, when he says it, he says, mind your business.
Exactly.
I love that. I love the mind your business because really, honestly, if somebody that I love decides that they want to represent as a different type of gender, really, how is that? What does that have anything to do with me?
Yeah.
And that's what I think that I find it fascinating that somehow or another, this particular facet of the gay of the LGBTQ rainbow has just been put out there as like some sort of wedge issue, when in reality we're talking about a small percentage of people that know what they're doing. They're not being forced to change genders, and parents are making decisions in their own child's best interest, and it has nothing to do with anybody else except the people involved.
Exactly.
So if there's one thing that we learned, it's mind your own damn business.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Listen to that episode. It's quite illuminating. It's episode 8, Her and Him. The next episode that we covered was called Family and Business. And we use family as kind of a double entendre because family meaning queer, and business because we wanted to focus on some of the businesses that have helped the LGBTQ community in El Paso and that are unabashedly queer owned and operated. And so because of that, we spoke to Marina Ardavino from Ardavino's Desert Crossing, but their family has been in business for many generations, and they've always been outspoken supporters of events and the LGBT community. Marina, who is a lesbian, was very gracious and talked to us about her business. We also spoke to David Villanueva, who was their events manager, and he talked a lot about the Pride market that they had leading up to Pride Month. So I go back to the same thing. If you want a word from me, it is commercial. And the reason for that is that I think that we're finally getting to a point in this community where we're viewing the gay dollar, the queer dollar, as something of importance. It's not just about money, it's the influence and the power that can wield over politics and the general state of our community. And so I think that this was a nice way to kind of tell people, one, it's wonderful that we in El Paso have gay-owned businesses. But as a community, we also need to support gay-owned businesses. And that's how we grow, and that's how we gain an influence. And so over time, we'd like to see more gay businesses and more interchange of commerce between our own community. What's your word, Izzy?
Brave. The fact that they're a business and willing to talk about the tie to the gay community. With some businesses are afraid of turning people away, and this business is just like, no, this is fine. That's part of our community too, and we're willing to help them out. And so I think that's bravery. That's awesome, and I'm heartwarmed by it. How cool is it to have somebody back you up like that publicly?
I think also that shows the progress that El Paso's making. Like,
is that your word?
Yes.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
The progress that El Paso's making, that more and more vendors and business owners and stuff are coming out as allies for the gay community. Yeah. And I think that's important, like Ted said, because they do have an impact in the economy and several things, you know, so it's important.
That, and also hearing their personal side of the story, how the Art of Venus came into business and how they're doing now. I mean, first of all, it's a great story. She was a wonderful person to talk to for our interview. And so I do recommend not only listening to that episode called Family and Business, but going and supporting Art of Venus Desert Crossing, eating a delicious meal.
And finding out why it's called Desert Crossing.
Good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll leave that for you all. After that, we did something a little different for Pride Month. It was our episode 10, Pride and Family. And what we chose to do is to highlight the different kinds of families that we design for ourselves within the gay community. And so that was, to me, one of my favorite experiences this past year, because we talked to so many people and so many different perspectives on what it is that made them a family. And so really, the word that I have for those episodes, I'll group them all together, is heartwarming. Because there were times while we were doing interviews that I was actually moved to tears, because when you're talking about Melissa and Paul, and you're talking about how when Paul decided to come out as transgender and her support of her child just is an inspiration and was beautiful. Hearing Izzy and Eduardo talk about their sisterhood of sorts was not only funny, but it brought back a lot of personal memories for me of good times and realizing that friends are there for the really, really good times, but also for the really, really not good times. And certainly Izzy and Eduardo did that. And then, of course, we talked to ourselves, which I love our little family. So, again, you know, heartwarming in my mind and a lot of fun. And we also talked to B and Dina. And they talked about they're lesbians, so they're going to do things differently. But that's what we love about lesbians. They've got everything. Their relationship is like a Swiss Army knife. They just work well together. Their story is romantic and practical and sweet and balanced and all of those things that you would want for any relationship. But it's quite remarkable seeing that as they're both mothers of their children and still very much in love and so much support between the two. So that was also, again, heartwarming. So that was my big takeaway. Cess, what was yours?
I would say friendships, just in general, because the connection there for everyone is that relationship. You start off as friends and you choose them to become your family, or, you know, you develop friendships with your children, you know, for Paul and Melissa and, you know, things like that. And I think, you know, people grow through friendships just as they do in relationships.
You're right. Yeah.
I would say amor. You know, good. And I know that, and that's silly, but it's not.
It's not silly.
Because I think one thing that people forget about the gay and lesbian and trans experience is that, you know, behind it all, we're all still humans. We all still have relationships. We're all capable of love. And that really is what our this whole gay experience is about, or this queer experience is about. It's about love and loving who you want to, and having your family that you love that is not the family you may have been born into, but it is still all based on love. So for me, amor really wraps it up for me, because when I listened back to the episodes, I thought, there's nothing but love going on there. So that for me was heartwarming.
I love that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so, again, if you want to see that mini series of episodes, it was in June. It is episode 10, Pride and Family, again, at queeronda.com. The episode that we did after that was all about health and care. And so my word for this episode is mind-blowing, only because I think that the doctor that we interviewed, Dr. Tony Ramirez, who is running a clinic that is openly embracing the trans community and understands their experience, as well as other members of the LGBT community. I mean, it made me feel like we were in San Francisco or New York. I mean, to have that level of care, attention from one of our own, and available at their new clinic on Dyer is just absolutely amazing to me. And it really just blew my mind that we live in an age in El Paso where we have that opportunity now. And we can offer that to particularly, members of our community of all ages, but particularly for a younger person, knowing that they feel a little protected within the medical system is just absolutely phenomenal to me. What was your word is?
Astounding. And I say astounding because I'm so impressed by the fact once upon a time when people wanted to get healthcare and those kinds of things, they were eschewed, they were put out. I think about, the 80s and the AIDS crisis and those kinds of things where people were turned away trying to look for healthcare. Look how far we have come. And it is astounding that they are helping people to embrace their transgendered identities and to see them as a human being. And that's astounding.
Right?
Yes.
Sess?
My word is dedication.
Oh,
because
good word.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Ramirez, who came back to El Paso to serve this community, small portion of the community. And, with the gender affirming care and all of that stuff, like she's putting herself out on a limb.
Yes.
And, to give these people this care that they need is essential and it's life-saving for many. And I think that says a lot about the kind of people who are in the queer community, the dedication and the bravery.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we transitioned from something so life-affirming as pride and healthcare. Our next episode, we titled Asylum and Advocacy because particularly at the time, and it continues to be a big issue in the news, looking at some of the immigration issues in our area affecting LGBTQ people that are coming through our area and the services that are available to them. It's a fascinating interview, and we talked to Jennifer Babai from the Legal Services at Las Americas Immigration Advocacy Center. And we also spoke to Gabby Lopez, and they were both just so impressive and they're so insightful about the way to manage the journey to become citizens in this country, particularly sensitive to those that are experiencing additional prejudice because they identify as LGBTQ. And so that was, again, just really life affirming to me.
So what was your word?
Awe. Because I think that I looked at the immigration issues a little bit more broadly. And I didn't really focus in until I started to do research for that episode about some of the unique challenges that LGBTQ people have. I mean, everything from rape and, slavery and these horrible things that they are particularly faced with as part of their immigration journey. To get here and to meet with such problems and with feeling so lost, and to have somebody on this side of the border extend their hand and say, yo te voy a cuidar. I'll take care of this. I'll get you through this. Just made me feel like, man, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Like these people are doing God's work. And it left me in complete awe of their services. It left me in awe of the organization. And it left me in awe for those that actually go through the process and become American citizens at all costs. So that would be my experience with that episode.
And my word would be legitimate, because it legitimizes people who want to be part of this country, who want to be part of our world, who want to be part of the human race and development. And also because it legitimizes the value that people who make that trek across, so many boundaries, it legitimizes their journey. It legitimizes the tenacity that it takes to tread that road and to face all those issues that they're going to face along the way, and the maltreatment. So can you imagine when you finally do become, and there's somebody who's willing to lend a hand and say, you are legitimate?
Yeah.
Good point.
My word would be humanity. Just because it's so easy to forget and get wrapped up in the whole fear-induced media where they say they're invading, they're doing this, and these people are humans. Whether, whatever journey they've taken. And, that's something that they helped us to understand the humanity of any person who's seeking asylum.
Right. And they're not all rapists and killers.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what we were led to believe this last political cycle, which led to our next episode that we called, that's when we started calling our episodes that we name now after songs. The next 12 episodes will be named after songs. And that's when we came up with Vote, Baby, Vote. And we talked about local, state, and national elections. And a lot of good that did us, bitches. Because none of us are real happy with the results of those elections, but it is what we have to work through. And if there's one thing I learned about, my word for that is lesson.
Okay.
And because I think that we all have to learn lessons from this last political cycle. We have to learn that we have got a lot of work ahead of us, and this is not a time for us to cower back and feel defeated. But most importantly, I think that we just need to realize that the queer community has seen darker days. Yeah. And we are still enjoying some level of acceptance in today's American society. And no matter what anybody tries to do, they're not going to take that away from us, because I don't think we're going to let them. So I think that there's a lot that we can still learn from the political climate that we're going to be faced to deal with the next 2 years, and then ultimately 4. But I do think that we are prepared for it. And if we're not, then we better get on the stick and get on the stick real quick, which I used to do after just one drink. Anyway, Izzy, what was yours?
Pogo stick. No, not really. No, I think my word would be stand. Because we have to make a stand. We have to, if you think about the Stonewall riots and those kinds of things, I always go back to those because that's where our gay rights were born.
It's inspiration.
And I think, we have to once again take a stand, and it's throughout society. You have push and pull and those kinds of things, but you've got to remember that every time you push, you get a little bit further. So we have to stand behind what rights are and what doesn't seem fair and what other people might pass as legislation. We have to stand against that, vote against it, and make sure that we are there to counterpunch.
Good point. Cess?
I wanted to say integrity, because I feel like that's an important lesson that comes with when you talk about politics in general, just the integrity of the people running, the integrity of the people reporting, the integrity of, even anybody you speak with. That integrity needs to be there. You need to be able to, this country's lost a trust in a lot of our, institutions. And I think that with politics in general, that's what needs to be reestablished.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Isn't that the truth? And again, I've never been a fatalist. I mean, let's face it, none of us are happy about the election results. But, at the same time, things are what they are. And like I said, this country has seen darker days. Our communities have seen darker days, and we'll continue to work. I mean, there's no other choice. We don't have any place to go but forward.
Absolutely. And we learn from all those past dark times that we need to be innovative, and we need to rethink things, and we need to keep plowing on. That's what we do. And
that's right. That's what we're known for. And this is now the time for us to be as creative and as subvergent and as vigilant as possible. And God knows that we can do it.
Create waves.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So after that, we have an episode 14, called A Little Respect, again, named after one of our favorite songs. But this has a very soft spot in my heart because we got to talk to Gilbert Salazar, who is a pioneer in my mind. He might eschew that name, but he is to me a pioneer, because talk about the people that have seen darker days in the gay community, as somebody that's seen where there isn't a lot of opportunity for gays in this city, has not only thrived and created opportunities, but just has had a real great attitude doing it. I mean, there's nobody that can tell that bitch what's what.
Yeah.
And that was true of her 40 years ago. That was true of her 4 days ago. And I love that about Gilbert. He will just carry on. And you can see that there's a spark in his character that should be an inspiration. And so that was my word for that episode, inspiration.
Yeah, I would say powerhouse. Because, Gilbert has gone through so many evolutions of the gay community here in El Paso, and he has lived through all of them, rolled through all of them, succeeded through all of them, and continues to be a guiding light and a powerhouse for what gay rights are, what a gay environment is, what creating gay spaces is about. And I think, wow, now that is a powerhouse human being. And, after all that he's faced and gone through and all of that, he's still willing to sit down and talk about all of those things with us. And
I agree completely.
He's still supporting the gay community.
That's exactly right. And just to clarify, you did say powerhouse, not power bottom. But I don't think you'd have a problem with that either.
I don't think so either.
Seth, what
that's
about
another
you?
word for it.
I would say showman, I guess.
Oh, good. Yeah, I like that word.
He was very much struck me as the ultimate showman, like knew what to do to get an audience going, knew what to do to get people happy and engaged, because we saw that in his interview with us.
Yes.
Like the way he engaged with us and the way he kept us just, at the edge of my seat, wanting to hear more from him.
He's a natural storyteller, and his stories are fascinating. I mean, there's a book in him.
Oh,
I wish he'd let us write it.
Yes.
Because he's got some stuff. And one of the things that I want to point out is that what started this podcast to begin with is we wanted to bridge some of the generational gaps between the older gay community and the new gay community, and how I believe that it's extremely important that the younger queers in this town understand where we come from and who our ancestors are in that regard. And Gilbert is a grandmother of us all, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, paved the way for all those young queers.
That's exactly right. Listen to his story. It's fascinating. It's entertaining. It'll make you laugh. Isn't it? It's called A Little Respect. It's episode 14 on our website, queeronda.com. After that, we did a quick little rundown of the Halloween events in El Paso. And that's because, let's face it, they are the gay high holy days. And so we couldn't go a whole year without mentioning Halloween. So, if you want to, just kind of reminisce about some of the Halloween events that we had last year and also plan for next year. That's a little subset of an episode that we released in October. Mm-hmm. Moving on from that, we got into something that we really like to talk about. Sex. So our song was Let's Talk About Sex. And that episode was fascinating. And I think one of the things that we learned as we spoke to Sergio Flores with the city of El Paso is exactly how much support there is for a safe sex movement in El Paso. Mm-hmm. And so, my word for that episode is protection.
Yeah.
And in a number of ways. One is that, Izzy, we talked to you in your experience at the early days of the Southwest States Committee about, and I used to help you hand out condoms and try and help get people to get tested and how we are now where you're able to have a very frank and open discussion about sex of all kinds and your people's sexual proclivities and their lifestyles, and help encourage them to get tested and to get on PrEP or whatever the case may be. And all of that is being provided through the city of El Paso. So that as a community makes me feel somewhat protected. Mm-hmm. Izzy, what's your word?
Hope.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Because, of course, I worked during some darker days, and even then when we had the protease inhibitors come in as part of treatment and those kinds of things, that was hopeful, kind of. It went on for a little while. The side effects were pretty terrible. Even going back further, the AZT and D4T, those side effects were even worse. So when you see all of the progress to PrEP, where now you can protect yourself with a new drug. And that is something that I didn't see coming down the way. During those days, it seemed dark. Mm-hmm. Now you've got HIV, so you just got to live with this until you don't live anymore.
Right.
And
that's a good point.
Yeah. And now you can protect yourself and still enjoy sex, and there ain't nothing wrong with that.
And live through and beyond HIV.
Absolutely,
it's no longer a death sentence. Ceci, what was your word?
My word is informative, because I was not aware, as like you all, the many options that are out there.
You mean you haven't had gay sex with men?
If not.
What are you doing in this podcast? Aside from representing the cisgender movement.
Yes.
Yeah. I can talk about women's rights left and right, but I don't know about this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was amazed at the progress that has been made. With Izzy's hope, it shows that it's always felt like there's been some kind of exclusion, for people with HIV.
Yes.
And just HIV in general, that's always been kind of the tone. Like, oh God, God forbid that people say that. And I feel now that there's progress being made. It's very informative, and you can go to, that episode to find out about all the options that are out there.
Excellent. Yeah. Very good. Well, that was our year in Queer Onda history, kids. Right. I'd like to thank you all both for being a part of my life and for being a part of this podcast, because that's one of the most favorite projects that I have to work on. So just tell us a little bit about what your goals are for 2025, Izzy.
Oh, gosh. Well, you know that I'm part of the Borderland Rainbow Center on the board now, so I'm really excited about that. But I'm really excited to be part of this podcast, and I'll tell you why. When I listened back to our episodes, I thought, what a remarkable thing, a conversation that we're able to have with all of these people and bring those things to light. And I'm really, really excited about what's to come. We've got a lot of energy and a lot of oomph behind us. And I just can't wait to see how we develop and evolve.
That's wonderfully said. Ceci, what about you? What are your vision? What's your vision for 2025?
I also feel like we can really progress and use this platform to make an impact on the community. We need to be a source of integrity for everyone.
Look at Ceci calling back to her words. That was going to be my thing. I was trying to remember what the hell I said.
Awesome.
To be a source of integrity for anyone who's, looking for contraception, who's looking for medical help, help and things like that. And I feel like we have the ability to go out there and use the resources in our city to help people more.
Right. As for myself, I really want to celebrate the idea of being able to share stories with our community, with people that are interested, because I think that everybody has a unique take on our particular subject or whatever we're talking about for that episode. But what they bring to the table is extremely personal and very well informed. I think that we've chosen some people that are really kind of bring some very interesting things to the table. I'm also excited about our upcoming partnership with El Paso Sun City Pride and some of the projects that we're working on with them, because again, it's just really a matter of community. Mm-hmm. And together is how we move forward. And singularly, it would become very difficult. And so I really look forward to really helping to build on our community and to build on this podcast and to help as many queer and queer-friendly people in El Paso as possible.
Yeah.
Putting the unity in community. I've got to have a tacky slogan for everything.
And with that, we wish you all a very happy holiday season. So, for one last time in 2024, this is Ted.
This is Izzy.
And it's Ceci.
And we are saying,
Agarren la onda, queers.
We'd love to hear from you. Email us at feedback@queeronda.com or visit our website and leave a comment. www.queeronda.com. That's www.queeronda.com.